Today's a bit of a somber day as well with Zeku Smith from NBA TV and Turner Sports. Today, actually, he's going to be buried down in Georgia. If folks remember, he was on our podcast a few weeks ago, shortly before he passed away due to COVID-19 complications. And for me, for many reasons, it's been a tough couple of weeks. I found out that he had passed away shortly before we went on the air last week. And the reason I didn't say anything about it then was simply because I knew that we couldn't get through the show if I did. That was a very tough time. I'm still coming to grips with that. I've had lots of conversations with folks who in some way, shape, or form were touched. And full disclosure, a friend of the A-List podcast, Mark Spears, him and I had a long conversation earlier today, and it was, it was tough for both of us because we were both very close to Zeku. But knowing Zeku the way I do, he would look at all this attention and just be like, well, y'all need to stop. Y'all need to get back to talking about sports. Y'all need to let's just keep it going, keep it moving. And that's just how he was. And so in that spirit, Kwani, I'm going to do what he'd want us to do and keep it moving. And talk about your green team, the Boston Celtics.
Oh, they're mine now. I don't know how they became my team, but okay.
They're fifth in the East, not really playing well. They're your team now, Kwani. They're your team. The injury bug with Marcus Smart, he's going to be on the mend for a couple of weeks. How do you think that's going to impact them?
Defensively, he is the defense of the Boston Celtics. So I don't know how they're going to look on that defensive end. Obviously, Jalen and Jason will have to step up even more. But Marcus Smart is a bigger loss than I think a lot of people would like to admit.
Yeah. And he brings so much to the table for this team that I just don't think he's ever fully appreciated for all the gifts that he brings to the floor. And yes, Marcus is going to make you cringe with some of them shots he takes. Absolutely. But we tend to forget about all the little things that he does on a night-to-night basis, the hustle plays, the, contesting shots, the type of things that I think far too often are overlooked when you're talking about a player of his stature, and particularly when you're talking about a Celtics team that's figuring out ways to win games, and he's a big part. So
it's funny to think about. They talk about how he's the heart and soul of the team, and it may just seem like a cliche nod to what he does off the court, but I think even on the court, the emotion that he exudes, the way he brings the team together in his own type of leadership way. It's not the same as Kemba's leadership or maybe even Tatum's or Brown's, but it's definitely something that will be missed.
Yes, absolutely. And another guy who may not be missed in the same way, but his play of late, we would rather miss than see. And that's Kemba Walker. Just hasn't been very good since he's come back. They need him badly as they head out west. Was not very good in that Lakers game. Just shot the ball poorly. Defense was solid, but they need him to make shots.
They do. And we look at the times that he comes back from injury. It always seems as though there is an adjustment period for him. And I was talking to a few of my friends that watch the NBA extensively, and someone was saying how they think that he was just a small fish in that big pond we know as Charlotte. But I think it definitely has to be the injury that we're not seeing him play the way we did last year. He was obviously an all-star. So this year, as we look towards that NBA all-star push, it seemed like it may be a little less likely that he gets into the game because of the injury that's plagued him and the way that he's been performing.
Yeah. And as we talk about the Celtics, they're obviously out west now. Lots of good games on the schedule. My game is the one against the Clippers. That's the one I'm really looking forward to seeing, because we talk about Jaylen Brown and Tatum as being this really dynamic duo, and there is no better two-way dynamic duo than Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. I'm really curious to see how will they fare against arguably the best 1-2 punch in terms of playing both ends of the floor in the NBA.
Clippers Celtics is definitely one of my favorite matchups. I always go back to that double overtime game the night before All-Star weekend, where we're looking at this game and we're like, why won't it end? And we end up, they end up finishing the game, and we all go to, was it Chicago last year? But that was an intriguing matchup. I love watching those two teams compete. I know Celtics Lakers is like the godsend, but I think Clippers Boston, that's actually just as compelling.
Yeah. And a lot of people are going to get excited about seeing Celtics and Golden State, but that Clippers game is one to watch. And the game that I know everyone is looking forward to watching is Super Bowl 55 in Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a guest, Ryan Hannable from WEEI, is going to be on to talk a little bit about that game and obviously some quarterback for the Buccaneers who he's won a few games in his day, I guess.
What are you talking about?
Some guy, some Hall of Famer, some, his name is Tom Brady, but some people like to call him the GOAT,
Yes.
that guy. That being said, Ryan Hannable from WEI, let's get Ryan in here and let's talk some NFL. Ryan from WEI. Hey, Ryan Hannable, thanks a lot for joining us. Appreciate you being on the A-List podcast. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good. Glad to be here.
Good. Well, first off, the story that we're all talking about, this little thing called the Super Bowl. It's kind of a big deal. When you look at the participants, obviously, the matchup that everyone is going to lock in on is Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. Just what's your take on that matchup and how you think that's going to play out in Super Bowl 55?
It's what football fans want. You got the oldest quarterback in the league, Tom Brady, and the up-and-coming star, Patrick Mahomes. So I don't think you could have asked for a better matchup for a Super Bowl fan, a football fan. It should be a great game. These teams, these players have played each other, I think, four times over the years. They both won 2 games apiece. I think Mahomes' teams have 121 points. Brady's teams have 120 points. So it's neck and neck, and this is sort of the deciding factor in a way, and it's what better stage to do that on the Super Bowl stage.
And for New Englanders, they've known Tom Brady. They've seen him at work for their team. And now, obviously, this Super Bowl is definitely, I think, going to be bittersweet, depending on what side of the fence fans are on. But from your perspective, how do you think Patriots fans will be approaching the Super Bowl?
I think they're all in on Tom Brady and the Bucs. Just the buzz around the town this week and even this whole playoff run, they've been all in on Tom Brady, and they've sort of adopted the Bucs as sort of their team, with the Patriots being out of the playoffs. So it's basically like another Super Bowl run here in New England, but yet they're wearing Tom Brady Tampa Bay jerseys than Tom Brady New England jerseys.
Right.
Are you surprised at all about that? Because Tom, let's be honest, he's an institution around here. And to see him not only walk away, but to have another Tom Brady-like season where, we're getting to the last game of the season. And once again, Tom Brady is there with a different cast. And it just seems that folks have accepted that a lot more with ease than I thought they would. Have you been surprised at all at how accepting fans have been of Tom Brady finding success with another team?
I've been surprised at that, but also the hate towards Bill Belichick. Like, it seems like way more people have sided with Tom Brady than Bill Belichick. And I think people are sort of just forgetting about Bill Belichick's last 20 years. And I think he was part of those Super Bowls too. And people are sort of acting like he's Rex Ryan or Marvin Lewis, the guy that's done nothing in the NFL. So I'm not surprised that Brady has gotten fans to have this support, but I guess as many fans, that's the part that surprised me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And your point about Belichick, I think that kind of stems from fans thinking that it had to be either Brady or Belichick, when I think people can't just accept that they both were great in their own respects. And maybe right now the Patriots just aren't the way that people expected them to look. But pivoting back to Brady, we talked about him and the relationship that he even has with Patrick Mahomes in the 2018 visit to the locker room. How do you think that could probably, not even in the Super Bowl, but how do you think that visit may have had an impact on Mahomes' career overall?
Yeah, I think Mahomes has actually been asked about that a couple of times this week so far, just that relationship. And I think that he's viewed him as sort of a role model and a guy that he looks up to. And the way that, because he's probably going to be the next Tom Brady in the NFL. And so he's looked to how he's handled the immediate attention, just attention in his everyday life. And so I do think they have, they're not best friends, but I think they have a relationship more than most NFL quarterbacks do. And I think he's a guy that he's looked up to and sort of admires and likes playing in these games against him. So I think that it's good for everybody involved, and just sort of the passing of the torch in a way that this could be, the passing of Brady's NFL to Mahomes' NFL. And I think this is a really good game for a lot of different ways.
I've been pleasantly surprised about that dynamic and just how it's kind of played out really over the last couple of years. Because when you think back to guys like in other sports, like, Michael Jordan in the NBA, Kobe Bryant, other previous elite quarterbacks, there seemed to almost be this begrudging reality that I'm just not going to be the man anymore. And they haven't embraced the fact that there's this next generation coming along who's going to take the mantle, if you will, from where I'm at, and hopefully elevate and level up the game that I love. And I think it says a lot about Tom Brady's understanding of just his place in the pantheon of NFL lore, that regardless of whether I beat him or not, I'm still the GOAT. And my legacy is already cemented, but why don't I just kind of help create some of the building blocks for the next legacy after me? And I've been really pleased at how Tom has embraced the fact that, yeah, I'm an old ass quarterback, but I'm still nice. I'm still nice, and I okay with you being nice. Because and you know, Ryan, tell me how your thoughts on this, but Brady's willingness to just kind of almost, you know, from time to time, just be that, you know, kind of the standard that Mahomes measures himself against and not fight that. How much do you think that will affect, if at all, the way Tom Brady approaches this game, if at all? The fact that this is a guy that is that going to make him even more want to go out and just beat Mahomes, or is he might have a soft spot for him, which there aren't a lot of soft spots when it comes to, as you know.
You're right. It's a different. He's not facing like Peyton Manning or one of his rivals from over the years. So I think there is something a little bit different there. But obviously, he wants to win. He wants to get that 7th Super Bowl. But sort of like you said, there's not much pressure on him because he's already won 6. He's already the greatest quarterback of all time. So it's almost like he can't really lose in this game. And he's going up against one of the other, you know, a great quarterback in the NFL, probably the next greatest quarterback of all time. So it's kind of a no-lose situation for Brady. So maybe he plays a little bit looser and can kind of have fun with it in a way and not feel the pressure of, oh, I need to win this game to cement my legacy, because his legacy is kind of already cemented.
Yeah. When you look at this Kansas City team, and we're going to talk a lot about Mahomes because he's that damn good. He deserves it. But Travis Kelce is another guy that, you know, we don't, he gets a good bit of attention, but it's different. You almost think that if he were with a different team and he didn't have such a megawatt star like Mahomes, or just a dynamic player like Tyreek Hill, that we would be talking even more about him. And one of the subplots that doesn't get a lot of attention is the tight end duel. Travis, Gronk, how do you think that's going to play out?
I think you're absolutely right. And I think Rob Gronkowski said himself this week that Travis Kelce is the most important player on that Kansas City offense besides Mahomes, and he's right. And, you know, Kelce kind of gets a knock here in New England because of that whole Gronk-Kelce rivalry. But I think if he was on another team and the Patriots didn't play the Chiefs in those big games, people would have more of a respect for Kelce. I think he's definitely one of the better tight ends in the NFL. He's like a wide receiver. He makes plays down the field. He probably doesn't block as much as Gronk does, but he's a game changer, and we'll see what happens in the Super Bowl, because like you said, those are two of the biggest positions on the field, and tight ends really evolved into almost like a receiver in the NFL. Teams are investing more into tight ends, and I think Kelce is a perfect example of that, as the Chiefs have gotten to where they are because of Kelce. It's not just, you know, Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes. It's Travis Kelce in the way that he can you know, change the game. And so he's a player to watch, and Gronk too. He's obviously has to put up the numbers like he has with New England, but he's still a force in the red zone. So I think, you know, anytime Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski are playing in a big game, you have to keep your eye on Gronk.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you talked about, we talked about those matchups, the tight end versus tight end, the quarterback versus the quarterback. Overall, which, if you were to like line up the roster, so to speak, which matchup are you still going to be in favor of?
In terms of like who versus who?
Yeah, overall.
I mean, I look at the quarterback, like that's the best matchup on the field. You have the greatest quarterback of all time against the potential guy that could replace him. So I'm looking there. But I mean, wide receiver, don't sleep on the Tampa Bay's wideouts. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and I guess Antonio Brown, if he plays. Those are two of the bigger names in the NFL to go against Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, Sammy Watkins if he plays. So there's a lot of matchups within the game to sort of pay attention to. And I think for fans, it'll be exciting that there should be a lot of points in this game. So I'm looking forward to a lot in this game.
But we talked a lot about the offense and how I think we all think that this might be a high-scoring game. So looking at the defensive end of the ball, how do we think, or which team do we think will have the most defensive impact, even if it may not be as significant as their respective offenses?
I think it's Tampa Bay's, and I think that's because they've gotten this far in the postseason, probably more because of their defensive play than their offensive play. I mean, look at the way that they played against the Saints and against the Packers. That unit won the game for them. And I know Tom Brady gets all the credit, but Tampa Bay's defense deserves a lot of credit too, because they wouldn't get to where they are right now without it. And I think that's if Tampa Bay is going to win the game, it's probably going to be because their defense makes a play or two. If they force a turnover of Mahomes, if they force a fumble, anything like that, they're going to need one of those types of plays. Whereas Kansas City's defense, I think that Tampa Bay's offense isn't as good as Kansas City's, so they don't need to get that defensive stop. So I guess if we're looking at that, Tampa Bay's defense is definitely the one to watch.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that Tampa Bay would not be here if it wasn't for their defense playing above and beyond the level of expectation. You go back to that Green Bay game where Aaron Rodgers looked more like Mr. Rogers for way too many possessions. And it had a lot to do with that Tampa Bay defense just really finding ways to put pressure on him, making sure receivers had no airspace whatsoever, and just really being the ultimate difference maker. I mean, people forget Tom Brady threw 2 or 3 picks, I think, in that game?
3 picks, 3 straight drives and picks.
Yeah, and so it wasn't as if this was like vintage Tom Brady with with just great drives and high percentage completions and very few mistakes. No, he made a ton of mistakes, but to Tampa Bay's credit, that defense was able to make all the necessary plays they needed to position them to win. And of course, they benefited from some opposing coaching blunders. And I guess that's really kind of putting it nicely. Some of the decisions that Green Bay made, particularly down the stretch, as Ryan, and as you probably know, didn't make a whole lot of sense in the moment. And in retrospect, still don't make a lot of sense when I think about it now that it's kind of had some time to marinate.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there was a lot of questionable plays in that game, and I think that's sort of like Tom Brady gets all the attention for getting at the Super Bowl, but I think some of those plays weren't getting talked about as much. Some decisions didn't get talked about as much. Even Tampa Bay's their own teammates. I think that I guess Brady did it nice himself on the stage. Like, let some of these other guys get the attention. Let some of these other guys talk, because sure, Brady got to his 10th Super Bowl, but he threw 3 picks in the game, and that certainly wasn't his finest performance.
Right. Now, one of the things that we like to do is we like to play games. And one game that we're going, and actually we've called it audible today in so many levels, you have no idea. And one of the audibles, right? But we've got a game that we like to call, this is our football version of it, called Deep Ball. I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to fill in a blank. And it's a deep ball, and you'll understand why we call it deep ball when you hear the question. You ready?
You should have called it Hail Mary, to be honest, but I digress. Continue.
This is not a Hail Mary.
I mean, because you're picking. Okay, go and ask the question.
Damn it, Kwani.
I'm sorry. Right. I just ruined it.
You totally ruined it. All right, here we go. Okay, Ryan, you have no timeouts. You're down 5 points, and you need a touchdown to win the Super Bowl. My quarterback is
Tom Brady, just because he's done it every single time.
Okay. I'm going to go with Mahomes. And here's why. At some point, a broken clock is right twice a day.
True.
At some point, Tom Brady is not going to deliver, even though there is literally little to no proof that day is ever going to come. But listen, the one thing I've learned about like betting and gambling is the long shot is your quickest way to a payday. And betting against Tom Brady is a huge payday. And if you don't win, it's like, well, it's Tom freaking Brady. So I would take Mahomes, one, because of those factors, but also just because I just think that, as we were talking about earlier about that passing of the torch, passing of the baton, if you will, I think this is that type of game. I think this is a game that is going to come down to late game execution. And I would love to see a situation where Patrick Mahomes has to drive the length of the field, down a touchdown or down 5 points, and needing the touchdown in order to win. Can he get it done? And the one thing that I know he knows as well as anyone is if you do that, you better make damn sure you have little to no time left on the clock and give that ball back to Tom. Because as we've seen through years and years of just amazing plays down the stretch, Tom doesn't need a ton of time to get it done.
Nope, not at all.
Doesn't.
Like we said too, though, those weapons that Patrick Mahomes has, I take those over Tom Brady's weapons. So I guess I can side with you on that.
Yeah, and the weapons that Tom's have, that the Patriots have this year, not the best weapons in the world. And really, when you look at just Brady's just arc of receivers, it's amazing that he's been as successful as he's had. And really, there's only maybe a handful that you can say were top shelf, elite. This guy can get me a Super Bowl ring because he's a great receiver type. They just didn't have a lot of guys that kind of fell into that category. But, again, that's why Tom's the greatest. I mean, he's found ways to find success with pretty much whatever he's had to work with. And to your point, Ryan, the toys that he had to play with this year in Tampa Bay, very nice.
Pretty good.
Very nice. That's why with that argument, I would take Tom Brady. I know if we're putting the betting aspect, you definitely want to cash out. But I think he is on this, it's cliche, but he's on this sort of revenge tour where people saw him as only a Patriots quarterback. He had the argument of being a Belichick-type system quarterback. And now he has so many things to prove, even though it sounds so corny, because I don't know if you guys saw that SNL split skit where it's like all these people that hate you are against you. But the reality is we know that he's great. I think for him, if he really wanted to close out this chapter of his book, which I know he doesn't foresee doing anytime soon, this would be the game to win. This would be the one to kind of prove I came into another city, and in 1 year I was able to kind of turn that franchise around as well. And, in light of the fact that Belichick and Kraft weren't giving him the weapons that he needed as well. So I get all of your arguments, but I'm gonna roll with Brady with this one for sure.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised at all if Tom won and walked away.
Right.
I still think he's got a lot of football. I still think he has at least 2 or 3 really good years left in him. But I wouldn't be surprised if he walked away at this point, because to me, Brady winning another Super Bowl at this stage of his career with a different team, a team that has, as good as the weapons they have, Tampa Bay will not go into that game as an overwhelming favorite. We're not looking at Patriots Giants from a few years ago when they went into that Super Bowl undefeated. The Chiefs are good, and they've been really good all season, but they haven't been as dominant as that Patriots team was, and as big an overwhelming favorite. So I think Tom, if he wins this Super Bowl, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he just says, okay, I've done it all. I've won all these Super Bowls. I'm going to get MVP, because we all know if Tom goes out there and throws 3 picks and they win and he throws 2 or 3 touchdowns, it doesn't matter what the defense does. He's going to get MVP. They're going to give it to him. You will need, a receiver to go for like 250 yards receiving for him to even get a thought about
start playing quarterback somehow at the end of the game, right? Yeah.
Right. And Tom would still get MVP even if he had like 70 yards passing, because that's just how that stuff works. But I just think that Tom is he if you weren't sure if he was the greatest quarterback before this season, where he's at now should just silence you forever. There is no discussion. I don't want to hear about this until Patrick Mahomes wins 2 or 3 more Super Bowls, and then you can have a conversation about him and Tom, him closing the gap on Tom. But he's not going to be there for many years.
Yeah, if that were to ever happen, it would not happen anytime soon.
Right.
He proved me wrong every time this year. I was against him against Washington and Green Bay, and all he does is win. And so there's really nothing else to say. All he does is win. It may not look the prettiest, but for whatever reason, he gets it done, and it's hard to knock that.
Absolutely. And we're winning today with you, Ryan. Appreciate you coming on the podcast. Ryan from WEEI, listen, thank you so much for your time and your insight. Now, I'm assuming that you will be watching the Super Bowl, and so I gotta take what I call cookies on the bottom shelf question and ask you who you got.
I thought we weren't gonna do that. Okay.
That was a funny eye roll. I was waiting for that.
Another eye roll.
I like the Chiefs in a close game. I think it's going to come down to the end. It could come down to who gets the ball last, but I just think the Chiefs have more playmakers. And like I said earlier, it's hard to get bet against Tom Brady, but I'm doing it.
Yep. I'm going to – go ahead, Kwani.
No, you're good. Go.
I was just going to say, you know what? My heart wants to go with Tom because I think it would be awesome for him to win another one. But my head is watching this Kansas City team play, and I've watched Tampa Bay play. I can't go with Tom on this one. I think this is when that broken clock is going to be right. It is going to be right all day. I think Tampa Bay is going to. I think Kansas City is going to win. I don't think it's going to be nearly as close as we wanted to be. I think they'll win by at least 10, and I'm okay with that. Because to me, Tom Brady, as Ryan pointed out, he's already won. He's already, in my mind, only added another layer to the many, many layers of evidence that he's the greatest to play this game. So, I just think it's Mahomes' time to just really take that mantle. And I think this will be the beginning of that clear and undeniable shift towards this being Patrick Mahomes' league and not Tom Brady's.
Yeah, I was going to take Brady for the reasons I mentioned earlier about him thinking he has a chip on his shoulder. But what I was going to ask was, where can people find Ryan's work if they do want to follow him on Super Bowl Sunday, or before that, obviously, and his football coverage overall?
WEEI.com, plenty of blogs, columns, all that stuff, and on Twitter at Ryan Hannable. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Of course.
Yes, thanks a lot, Ryan. Appreciate it. Ryan Hannable from WEEI. Thanks so much for your time, my friend.
Not a problem.
Well, Ryan Hannable, pretty damn good. I like that kid. I like that kid. That was some good stuff. Got into a little Tom Brady conversation. His deep ball question was, his answer was kind of what you'd expect. Either way, no matter how you look at this Super Bowl, it's going to be a good game.
It is. This is one of the few I've been excited for in a long time.
Yeah, it just feels like this Super Bowl has every Super Bowl has 1,000,001 angles that you can attack and really focus on. But I love the fact that there's a heightened level of competitiveness with this one. I think two of the better teams, if not the two best teams. Mm-hmm. And you've got that whole passing of the guard angle, where Tom Brady, can he get another one at the age of 175? And can, this wet behind the ears kid from KC win a second Super Bowl in a row, similar to what Brady has done? So I think this is going to be an awesome Super Bowl. But like I said, the clock is right twice a day, even when it's broke. And I think that Tom Brady's streak of just beating the odds is at some point going to come to an end. I got to go with Mahomes in this one. The weapons around him, his play, I just think it's his time to get that second chip. So that's me.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. Either way, I have no horse in this race. I'm just looking forward to a good football game.
I'm just here to look at it. Look, that sounds like a little Marshawn Lynch's.
I'm just here so I don't get fined. Yeah, that's my guy.
Good game. I'm just
big Marshawn Lynch fan here.
Yeah. Well, speaking of good game, Celtics. Obviously, we talked a little bit earlier about them heading out west. That'll be fun. Also fun content that you, Miss Kwani A. Lunis, have. What you got?
Yes, so it is Black History Month, and the 10 questions of NBC 10 Boston series that I've talked about on this podcast a few times, we're revamping it specifically for this month. And the whole purpose is to kind of talk to what I consider future history makers, people that are already making moves in the city of Boston and kind of capturing their story a little earlier on than we generally would when it comes to history in general. So the first guest will be Chef Douglas. He is the chef and owner at Maida Restaurant in the Boston area. It's an Italian restaurant, but Black owned. And I'm really excited to talk to him. I've actually been to his restaurant, so I know the food's good. I'm excited to hear how he became as good a chef as he is now.
Kwani, you won't be keeping that stuff to herself. Yeah, I went to that restaurant and it was really good. Don't tell nobody.
Why not? Is that free promotion? Should I not have done that?
Look out for your boy. I'm saying you should have let me know that spot had food.
My bad. I got you next time. You will know in advance. What do you have coming up this month, though? Do you have anything you're working on?
We got a couple things on website, sherrodblakely.com. We'll have some quarter mark rankings and just awards, accolades. Also, I have a new endeavor that I'm involved with. I'm actually going to be covering the NBA for Bleach Report. And so my first piece will actually be coming out tomorrow morning sometime.
Just mic drop that. Goodness gracious. We're prepared for that one.
Yeah. Looking at just the New York Knicks, who even though they've kind of hit the bricks a little bit lately, why there is for once legitimate hope in Gotham that they can actually do something other than just show up at the NBA lottery every damn year. So that piece will be coming out, and I'll be coming up with at least 1 or 2 kind of league type pieces going forward. That'll be on the different Bleacher Report platforms, and that's kind of it. And as you know, I'll be doing my teaching thing at Boston University. Shout out to Boston University. But that's kind of it for now. So.
And don't forget, if you are an NBA fan, All-Star voting is now underway. The NBA did not pay me to say that, but I would love to see some good NBA All-Stars up in there. So if you are compelled, make sure you vote. I'm not going to say for who, though, because I'm bipartisan.
Vote for the best players that you believe, and not the guys whose names you know. Vote for the ones you actually see play. Yes. So if that dude that you really, really like has played like 3 games,
don't do it.
Don't
Stop being a clown.
Don't be that clown. Do not be that clown.